All right, welcome to Inside the Birds pregame show. It's Geoff Mosher, it's Adam Caplan, and of course Andrew DiCecco with us. And my gosh, they call New Orleans the Big Easy, and I think today it was the Big Queasy for the Eagles and their fans, but they somehow survive, and they escape New Orleans with a 15-12 win against all odds. We're going to go inside this game. A lot of interesting schematic things that happened on both sides of the balls. A lot of improvements on both sides of the balls. But it looked like the Eagles were going to lose this game, Adam, like they did the week before. They don't. They pull it out. And how significant is this win?
Oh, it's major. I mean, this is such a courageous win. Blood and guts game. They lost several key players. They're down to 3 receivers to end the game. Slay gets hurt, down 2 offensive linemen. Then the head coach does his best to make one of the worst situational decisions. Sirianni had a bad game. I'll leave it at that. Several bad mistakes that almost cost him. But the players are like, we're not going to lose. The defense was incredible. I don't know what Vic Fangio and Clint Hurtt said to their 2 young tackles, particularly Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter played with his hair on fire. It was incredible. I don't know what else you could say. He was phenomenal. Stats don't show it. The tape will show it, I'm sure. Now, this is just a courageous game, and what an unbelievable effort. And they came in fired up. Just a great game, and certainly both sides of the football have to be pretty proud with all the injuries that they had. And then we had our Dallas Goedert game, which we were hoping for last week. We got it this week.
Yeah, a big game. Obviously huge. They needed him to come alive. Andrew, they got Tampa Bay up next, another good defensive team. They're all banged up. When you look at this game, are we going to look back on this in 6 or 7 weeks and go, wow, that was such a crucial – it doesn't matter how they won, but the fact they won becomes the bigger storyline?
Yeah, especially because of the shortcomings in personnel. You had Fred Johnson and Tyler Steen playing on that right side. You had to overcome a lot of coaching errors in this game. It took everybody. Johnny Wilson at the end of that game, well, he had a catch early in the game, but he was forced to step up. He had a tough drop there, but they still found ways to move the football. 170 yards on 10 catches for Dallas Goedert. This is the long-awaited Dallas Goedert game. Saquon came through when they needed him to. You have to be encouraged if you're the Eagles based on just the team effort.
Yeah, listen, I want to get into this first because this is more big picture before we start talking about individuals and offense and defense. Adam mentioned this, Andrew, and I agree with him, and I'm curious on your thought. The Eagles won this game despite some really bad situational coaching from Nick Sirianni. And we don't normally come that down on the coaching because it's really about the players. But there are decisions you have to make to put your team in the best position to succeed. And I don't feel like those were made today by Nick Sirianni.
No, they weren't. I mean, right before the half, on that 4th and 1, you handed it off to Saquon when you're at the 15-yard line. You have a backup right side of your line. For Grant Calcaterra, absolutely gets blown up on the play, and they're able to kind of make a play on Saquon there. I mean, I don't understand why you would do that in that moment. And then there's in the second half giving up. You should have taken the points also in another part. So I don't know what Nick Sirianni's doing. I don't know if he's pressing or what the case was, but the Eagles found a way to overcome it.
It almost felt, Adam, at least this was my read on it, he got kind of blasted for being both passive and aggressive last week. So he just decided I'm going to be one way, and that's overly aggressive. And the whole thing about, we always say analytics is important and it works, but it doesn't take into context in those moments when you're down your right guard, down your right tackle, lose it. You don't have your star receiver. And that's where I think that he overcompensated and didn't. He's like, I want to be aggressive and set the tone, but being aggressive wasn't being smart.
Yeah, that's what I said to you guys in text during the game. This makes no sense. They're down 2 linemen. The thing I don't understand is how in the hell do you go for a 60-yard field goal, but then you pass up a 54-yarder? He contradicts himself. That's bad coaching.
Mm-hmm.
He does that a lot. He does that a lot.
But this is the first time that we have the results, but I said it actually when it happened. This makes no sense. And then now, Kellen Moore, by the way, called a phenomenal game. I mean, with all that he had to deal with, he called a great game. Hurts very courageous today. Yes, he had the two bad plays. One, Greg Olsen, I thought he gave good insight because Greg would know from a former tight end. Hurts through with timing, and Smith has got to win. He's got to get inside. Now, you could have argued it should have been on the other shoulder, but that's fine. The fumble's totally on him. You can't do that, though. Like, you have to have better ball security. But Hurts made several great plays. And the line, by the way, for a line that's missing 2 starters, was phenomenal. Andrew, I don't know about you, but I was blown away by the protection. And give Hurts credit for hanging in the damn pocket and not bailing. Holy smokes, he didn't bail today.
He trusted the protection in front of him, and you have to give credit to Tyler Steen and Fred Johnson because it's not easy to come in game when you don't have any first-team reps during the week. I don't know that a lot of folks can really appreciate how tough that is.
Good point.
They held up. And credit to Hurts for not bailing out of the pocket and trusting the players in front of him and stepping up and making some big-time throws.
Yeah, and by the way, to add to that, Andrew, give him credit for not just doing that in a regular season game without a lot of reps, but at the Superdome, where we talked about is such a difficult place to play in sync, to communicate, to know your response, to hear your teammates. So we're going to go to the film and we're going to see a couple of breakdowns, and Brzee got him once and Granderson. But in general, I agree. They did a really good job for that situation. And the one thing I pointed out in the post, and I wound up being wrong because they win the game, but it really did impact them. I said, you're going to get at least 3 to 4 penalties at the Superdome. No matter how good you are, it's going to happen. I felt like the Eagles could not get like 6, 7. Well, they had a bunch. They had way more than 5 or 6. They had a bunch. And honestly, if they had lost this game, we could look back at some of those critical penalties, those holdings, those false starts, and other penalties that put them in a spot. But amazingly, it was the Saints. They really hurt themselves. I mean, the Penning penalty really hurt them. And by the way, Derek Carr did exactly what Jalen Hurts did last week that everybody said was, and rightfully so. You have time. Don't force that ball. Don't throw the interception because you think you need to be a hero there. Well, that's what Derek Carr tried to do. And Blankenship just basically got in the same way that Hurts got last week.
And they got really conservative in the second half. I thought the Saints did. I didn't think that they kept their foot on the gas, and they tried to run the ball and bleed some clock. And I think ultimately it hurt them because the Eagles were up for the challenge.
I agree. Excellent. All right. Good big picture takeaways. Let's move into – I saw a lot of improvement today. Even though the game was ugly at times, I think there was clear improvement. I want to start off with defense. All right. So obviously, and we mentioned this in the pregame show, Adam, with Greg Cosell, the Saints don't line up offensively like the Falcons do. The Saints line up in heavier packages. And even without Taysom Hill, they still had a fullback in there. They still had a tight end in there. So they still had a heavy personnel. And that made the Eagles, I would assume, counter with those 5-man fronts that you didn't see on Monday night because Atlanta was in 11 personnel mostly. I can't help but think, why didn't Vic take like Zach Bond on Monday night and just in nickel and bring him down on line of scrimmage at the time? But at least the adjustment was made. And obviously Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis got the message this week, Adam.
Well, especially Carter. Carter was he was incredible. And I got to give Zach Bond credit. Obviously, this last game he didn't play well. He was everywhere again, man, diagnosing. They did a great job of Kamara. I'm stunned. Again, it was one of these games if you couldn't make it up. Bond had 13 combined tackles, 9 solos, was everywhere. Gardner Johnson had some plays. Yeah, he was on the back end of that touchdown. We don't know what the coverage was. But, man, it was just such a courageous game. I'm stunned. When you're down this many players and that environment, to somehow win, it's just remarkable to me. I'm kind of an awe. And obviously, the one thing we didn't mention, we do have to mention, you mentioned the defense. And I know we'll get to the offense in a second. But Barkley was just phenomenal. And Andrew talked about it. With backup offensive linemen, you got to be kidding me. It's one of these games you can't make it up. How could you see this coming?
Yeah, we'll talk about
I thought that not only Zach Bond, but I thought Nakobe Dean had a good game as well. And that was a byproduct, I think, of Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter playing so well up front, allowing them to stay clean and make plays at that second level.
I think I have no issue saying that the defensive line lost the Eagles the game Monday night against the Falcons, but won the Eagles the game against the Saints. We could talk about Dallas Goedert. We can talk about Jalen Hurts staying in the pocket. All these things are true. But that Saints offense was averaging 40 points a game. Now, we knew that was a little unrealistic, but I thought that they could at least get to 20, right? I mean, you thought that they would be more functional passing the ball than they were. And that's basically because Jalen Carter, and I get it, they lost an offensive lineman too, but the Eagles were down guys as well, so it doesn't really matter. But Jalen Carter dominated the game up front the way a defensive tackle of his caliber should, Andrew. I mean, that to me, I said that won the game for the Eagles, because if they don't play like that and they're a sieve, then New Orleans probably scores a lot more points.
Yeah, that was the Jalen Carter that I saw all summer, the one that I have been writing and reporting about, dominant at the point of attack. Even if he wasn't getting to the quarterback, he was finding his way into the backfield, and other players were cleaning up the play. But just a dominant force, and if he's able to sustain that level of play, he's going to be an all-pro this season. He was just tremendous and really took over the game on the defensive side.
He passes defense, by the way, which is so rare for defensive linemen. And so that is, do you know how rare that is? It's to get two. One is enough. Typically for a D lineman to get two is important. And the stats may not show it when PFF comes out with their grades. Who knows? But we all saw it. Jalen Carter was the MVP of the defense. He was just incredible.
Yeah, I guarantee you when we talk to Greg Cosell on Inside the Tape and when we look through the tape ourselves, we're going to see that on certain plays, Olave was wide open, right? He's their big play target. He did get some big plays in the fourth quarter. I guarantee you're going to see that Carr couldn't get the ball to him because of Jalen Carter. And if not because of Jalen Carter, because of the fear of what the Eagles were doing by collapsing the pocket. Because Adam, as you mentioned, if you can get to Derek Carr, he becomes, what's his name?
Captain Checkdown.
Captain Checkdown. You want to care to know what his average yards per attempt was against the Eagles?
Absolutely terrible today.
5.7. Yes, absolutely terrible.
You see the happy feet? He doesn't have the thing about Carr amongst many issues that I've had with him. Here's the guy's a pretty good athlete. Early in his career, you go, wow, he could run. And he stopped doing it. He refuses to run. Hurts sees it, he goes.
Right.
I get Hurts might not be as explosive as he once was, but he knows when to run. And Carr, quite frankly, doesn't seize the moment. He had an awful game, and the Eagles' defense had a lot to do with it. Boy, did he have happy feet. I love when he just throws it to the ground and gives up on the play. That's bad.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, Jalen Carter on the Saints' first drive, if you remember, they were able to move the ball. It kind of looked bad, right? You saw Kamara have some big runs, but they got into a third down. Jalen Carter got the pressure. On the Saints' second drive, they go 3 and out. Why? Jordan Davis got a sack on, I believe, first down. Right, puts them right behind the sticks. And then on their third possession, they go 3 and out because Jalen Carter again got disruptive and rattled Derek Carr. So you saw it right there. Now, Rashid Shaheed, right? He was my MVP. He could have, if he holds on to that ball in the end zone, the tone of the game might turn differently. But hey, both teams had some close plays that didn't come through. I thought Quinyon Mitchell acquitted in a really difficult atmosphere, Andrew. I thought he acquitted himself again fairly well and showed you why they are keeping him outside.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not going to change. He's a really confident player, really short-term memory, which is a critical aspect to playing the cornerback position, especially for a young player. I thought he really met the moment, and it's been really a continuation from what I've seen through training camp. Vic Fangio has been really bullish on him and his progress, and he's not going to be. They're not going to be rotating him in and out for Isaiah Rodgers or Keely Ringo. That's his spot.
Yep.
Right. Play of the game. 4th down stop on Kamara in the third quarter on 3rd and 3. I mean, that was such a huge turnover. Was that 4th and 3? I'm sorry.
Is it the Zach Bond tackle?
Yeah. He got dragged a little bit, but he eventually took him down short of the sticks, and that was an enormous stop for the Eagles at that point. And to your point, I thought Bond played well. I don't think Bond per se played poorly against the Falcons. When you get cut like that by a Pro Bowl right guard because you haven't seen it, it's really the defensive line's job to keep that guy, engaged a little bit before he just jumps out and runs at your ankles. I thought from a diagnosis standpoint, he was fine. He got cut a lot and depleted. But today, much different.
We've seen three games from Bond right now, and I think you've seen him be able to acquit himself better than anyone could have expected through those games.
Yeah. Hey, Andrew, and I kind of laughed when Vic Fangio had to explain what he saw in him because he really never played inside backer. The way that the Saints aligned their defense, there were some times when you could have made the case that he played inside. I didn't expect much of Vaughn in training camp. The thing Jeff and I know is we had heard he didn't make a lot of mistakes. That's what they liked about him. But I can't believe that this level of play guys that he's putting out. I don't know who. Obviously, Howie Roseman makes a call. He makes all decisions, but I'm not sure who in their pro personnel department or who liked him. But you got to give him kudos because nobody saw this.
Yeah. Somebody liked him in the draft because he won the 3rd round. But his ability to diagnose and process and take all the information that's thrown at him, because there's a lot of responsibilities placed in the linebacker position in Vic Fangio's defense. So I saw that in training camp. You saw he was given more responsibility. He was moving. He's playing a lot faster. He was sort of taking on a leadership role. So I'm not – I mean, I don't think anyone could have expected this. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, yeah, I thought he'd be a double digits tackle guy, critical stops. No, but I think the Eagles have to be really pleased.
Absolutely. And yes, somebody did like him from New Orleans. What we don't know is what they liked him as. Was it an edge rusher? Was it an inside linebacker? I mean, he was mostly drafted to be an edge rusher out of Wisconsin, right? But he wound up just being a special teams player. So to your point, Adam, they saw something in him. The Eagles did. And Vic Fangio, maybe he saw, again, same school, right? Maybe he saw a little Van Ginkel in him and said, I can do the same thing there, although they're really not using him on the edges. But so far, so good with Zach Bowen. Let's just finish off the defense with this. I'd love to see the snap counts when they come out. It looked to me that when they went to their 4-man rush, especially in the second half, maybe mainly from the second quarter on, that it was more Josh Sweat and BG than Bryce Huff.
Yep.
So
I didn't see Huff at all.
I saw him a couple of times. I know he was out there, but not frequently like you would see on third down. So
no. And he was getting that Juwan Johnson cleared him out on a completely erased him on a play late in the game that I noticed, and he just does not do well disengaging.
Right. So we'll have to see what that means for him going forward. You know, that's too high price. You got one. I don't want to say high price guy in Devin White, but for a linebacker on the Eagles, he's making good coin. He's inactive again for the second straight week, and Bryce Huff now seeing snaps in the pass rush decrease. It's early.
We think we have to go back and look at.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point. We think, but I mean, even if he was out there, kind of invisible. I noticed
he was a non-factor, absolutely non-factor.
Yeah.
I listen, and if Vic Fangio's going to play whoever it takes to win, BG's playing more than he probably should at 36, but he still plays at such a high level. He's a great physical shape, brings great energy. Really, he's always been a good run defender. They're 3D tackles because they start three. I mean, between Williams, Davis, and Carter, got the job done. I would love to know what Clint Hurt, because he's responsible for those guys. I don't know what he said to those guys, but whatever it was, and obviously they show it to him. Okay, and Carter talked about it. He knows he had not played well. Right. This is his coming out party. Whatever the tape showed to him, he responded.
The Eagles also survived the block punt in the second.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. Yeah, I forgot about
Very rarely do you see those sort of plays. You're able to kind of escape. That doesn't happen often.
Yep.
Yeah, good point. That looked like a disaster at that point. Let's move on to offense. I want to give Jalen Hurts his flowers. Obviously, it did not look great when he threw the interception. I know that Smith could have flattened his rat out. I know Greg Olsen did a really good job. I still think it's a difficult throw for that coverage that they were playing to try to wedge it in there at that moment, because you can't make that mistake and leave the points on the board. And the mistake was made. You don't love the fumble at all. A lot of people on Twitter calling it Carson Wentzian, because he really wasn't hit that hard. He just stumbled and fell and the ball goes out, right?
Look at where he had the ball, guys. Look, he didn't secure it at all. That's bad.
It was not secured, right? And then, of course, you don't love that he misses Dallas Goedert wide open to start the third quarter for a touchdown just to take that 6-yard. But I think it's a bigger development for him. Adam mentioned this earlier, that for the most part, he stayed in the pocket. He trusted Andrew, like you said, he trusted his protection. He did not bail nearly as much as we saw him do against the Falcons. That has to continue. We have to see that going forward. But Adam, you see when he does that, he stays in the pocket. That helps you see Saints defenders fall into each other and Dallas Goedert running wide open across the middle. And those kind of plays are the difference between winning and losing sometimes.
And I love the schematics by Kellen Moore. He rolled him out sometimes, or they had him roll out and get a good vision. It's kind of what you're talking about. And he delivered. Hurts is a really good arm. But the most surprising thing is protection. I cannot believe, without Lane Johnson left early in the game, he had a concussion. And then Becton leaves with that finger injury. You saw at halftime, he tried him and Nick Gates were on the sidelines trying to work it out, but he couldn't play. And then Tyler Steen gets thrown in there with Fred Johnson. I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be interesting. And I just cannot believe on the road that they held up like that. That's the crazy thing about this game. So many things happen that you can't plan for, and the coaches have to give them credit. Obviously, Stout getting them ready. Mm-hmm. Fred Johnson held up. Overall, this is just a courageous game for this group. I'm just blown away they were able to win this game overall. I didn't see it. Quite frankly, I don't think anyone did.
It sort of, Andrew, gives you. I think there was a lot of doom and gloom. There were a lot of fans who just thought that the Eagles are headed down a bad road. And listen, it's just one game, but when you see how quickly the run defense came back together, and you saw the major strides that Hurts was able to make as far as staying in the pocket, I think it does give you a renewed sense that it's a long season, and what you see the week before, or even the first 2 weeks, isn't necessarily what you're going to see over the next 6, 7, 8, 9. And again, the biggest development is if Jalen Hurts can continue to do that and not revert back into bailing. I mean, because they came after him today. By the way, this is what I wanted to talk about. This is the first time that Hurts saw the cover zeros aplenty that were supposedly the book on him, right? You throw cover zeros at him, you're going to make a bail. They threw everything at him.
They did corner blitz too. They quarter
yeah, the first one,
the creep blitz with the corner off the edge, and what it means is you hide behind the lineman, and they didn't see him.
Mm-hmm.
But man, overall, you're right. The Saints threw a lot at him. Everybody hung in there, no question. And having the equalizer with Barkley, man, that is some equalizer.
But Geoff, to your point, that's why I saw way too much overreaction this week from a lot of folks. It was out of control. That's why you can't make too much out of 2 weeks. You have to let things play out, allow coaches to assess their personnel and find ways to put them in position before you can sort of chalk it up as the defense is going to be the reason why this season doesn't get to where it needs to go. I just saw way too much of that, and you have to be careful when you do something like that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, listen, they still have work to do offensively. It wasn't pretty. Obviously, I hate to be that guy because none of us are ever that guy, but there were maybe a couple of first or second downs where I thought you might want to get Barkley the ball a little more here as far as running, because he was doing a decent job. I know in the third quarter, I texted you guys in the third quarter, what's Barkley doing? Because he slipped on one play and he was just looked like he was going to have one of those bad second halves, and then he wound up ripping off a touchdown. But on the road, down lineman again, down two guys, Andrew, I kind of thought they might try to give the ball to him a little bit more early on earlier downs to set up passing later.
Yeah, and if he's able to rip off some big yards, you sort of take that electric crowd out of the mix, and it makes it a lot easier for communication and being able to fine-tune the details. So I kind of thought that they were going to lean that way. The running game did not look very promising early in that game, Geoff, but I think you started to see the belief that Saquon had in the line in front of them, and they kept going for it, and eventually something broke.
Yeah. It's actually a good sort of, I don't want to say a tune-up, but the way Dennis Allen came after him, we know Todd Bowles is going to do that in 7 days from now when they play the Bucs in Tampa. So at least you got to see. We mentioned this, Adam, in the pregame show. Sometimes Hurts is better when you blitz him because he knows what he wants to do with the ball, as a good quarterback should, because he knows where the pressure is going to be. He knows where the voids are. It's when you're sort of dropping everybody and able to funnel that pocket around him that he gets a little itchy. But they did come after him today with success. I think that, Todd Bowles will see that he did hang in the pocket, but he was also rattled on a couple of throws.
But overall, they got him, and the Eagles got him badly. In fact, best, I love the crosser. The fact what happened was they ran a rub with, I believe it was 83 Dotson for the big play to Goddard on the crosser. That was phenomenally executed. It's a great call. And you saw the Saints, it was like Keystone Cops. They ran into each other. It was hilarious. And it's just great execution. Kellen Moore had a great game, by the way. It's going to get lost in, obviously, Barkley's game, and Hurts had some spectacular plays and whatever. But when you're dealing with what they had to deal with, all these people out, the fact that they won this game, to me, is just absurd. The Saints have to feel like, how did this happen?
Right.
But this is an incredibly courageous game for everyone. And they responded to that tough loss on a short week. Players have told us over the years that sometimes it's better to be on a short week when you have a terrible loss like that at home. And, Nick Sirianni, I know he's got a top 3 road record over the last 3 years. It is amazing how good they are on the road.
It is. And they'll have to put that to the test again. The Bucs game is on the road as well, right?
It is, yeah. In fact, they have a lot of injuries. Vita Vea's got an MCL. Cansey's been out with a calf injury. Winfield's got a foot injury. Gadecki's got a concussion, the right tackle.
Right.
So, and they got housed by Denver. Absolutely rocked at home.
Yeah, this sport is unpredictable, man. You could have convinced me that the Bucs might lose that game, but not losing by 19. I think they're at home getting smashed that way. So hey, week to week you're different. Look, it's the injury situation though is bad because the Eagles really don't have now a number two. They don't have a number one or a number two receiver without A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. But even if Devontae can make it back, I mean, we saw Johnny Wilson. We've seen him a couple of times now really struggle to either catch the ball or to separate. And by the way, I think he now has 2 holding calls trying to block on screens. And this was supposed to be an area where he's excels. So he's a rookie. He's a 6th-rounder. I get it. It's hard to expect much, but he needs some seasoning right now before he's out there playing a lot of snaps at him.
I mean, he's a 4th receiver. That's what you want to be. You don't want him to be starting at 4th, really at 4th or 5th. If you have your druthers, probably 5th. But he can block. I mean, the block, he could block. That doesn't take – I mean, holding is holding. You can't do that. He can certainly block, and he's a big body. You know, on the drop, you know, the thing is he was engaged. It might have been Alontae Taylor. Then he had to look over, and he just couldn't secure it. It's not an easy catch. Yes, he should have had it. But look, they have a real problem. So they ended the game with 3 receivers. Covey hurt his shoulder. Don't know the severity of that. A.J. Brown with the hamstring. He hasn't worked since he got hurt. Obviously, at best, will be questionable this week. And remember, they have the bye in week 5. Devontae Smith's got a concussion. They got major problems right now. On the practice squad, they've got Kyle Phillips as a slot, Danny Gray, who could run, but he just got
here. Jack Saint, too. He's there.
Right. Again, these are all young players. They don't have a veteran they can go to, so they're in trouble. There's no doubt. Now, they played some 13 personnel today. In fact, one of the big plays was on 13, 3 tight ends. That's all you can do. That's all you can do is what Kellen Moore had to do. He had a makeshift offensive scheme, had to change it up to use the tight ends as much as he did. Yeah, there was nowhere else to go. Would have liked to see Will Shipley get some. He had a kickoff return. I'd like to see him get some run at running back, maybe get him out of the backfield. But you're right, Geoff. It's going to be next Sunday in Tampa. Is going to be hard. We have no idea what's going to be available yet.
You know, it's interesting. The pony package that involves Shipley and Barkley yielded some nice plays for the Eagles in the opener against Green Bay. I don't think they showcased it at all against Atlanta. And I don't think that it was on display against the
Didn't
Saints.
see it. In fact, I don't think he had an offensive snap in game week 2, right?
He did not. No,
he did not. So it's kind of strange that, I mean, listen, I thought that was something you show and then maybe build off and do some different things with. But clearly, maybe that was just game plan specific for what the Packers do. But it did work. So maybe that comes out especially next week if they are still really hurting at wide receiver. We'll see if A.J. Brown can get back on the field, or else it's going to be a really tough day. All right, so good win, important win, significant win. Our main takeaways here: Nick Sirianni's got to be better. He's got to be better situationally. He's got to understand the context of his team. He may have a bunch of injuries, right? Whether it's Lane Johnson, whether it's Mekhi Becton, Slay also went out of this game. We should
Slay
had to come in. Covey, you have to call a game. You don't have to be a wuss, but you got to be smart. And that's what I think he's got to understand. When you have the opportunity to get points on the board on the road against a good team, you should take some points.
Well, think about it, though. This is the best way to sum it up. Very clear. Your defense completely shut New Orleans. They can't do anything. Your defense has carried the game. Punt the damn ball, pin them down.
Yeah, that was
that's what it really means.
Right.
Like, that's why you do it. I'm all for Jake Elliott kicking a field goal, but he also contradicts himself. He decides not to let him kick. What it was, about 54 yards-ish.
Yeah.
And then, what did you think of the instead of going the tush push, they had Barkley cross, and they handed off to him. They obviously didn't get it. I was like, why?
Calcaterra got blown up on that play.
Yeah, why not tush push it?
Yeah. I agree with you. I thought it was so close that they should have tush pushed it, and they got a little cute there. Now, if that play works, do we all say, "Hey,
sure,
that's cool"?
I was just surprised.
Yeah, but again, you're asking Calcaterra to make a block that he is not always going to make. So, I mean, I guess you're hoping the element of surprise doesn't put you in that position. But
Stoll should have been there on that play if they're going to run that.
It's a great point. Well, I wonder where Stoll was at that moment.
I have to go back and watch that because he may have been on the other side. I don't know. I have to go back.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, there were some questionable calls. I thought Clint Kubiak got a little conservative too there. In his passing game, but you can understand why when he had an offensive lineman out too, and they just weren't passing the ball. But they did run the ball well on the Eagles, and there are still things for the Eagles to work on in defense, but a major improvement. And for the first time in a while, next week, it's not like they're going to have a real great running back they got to fear. Rashad White, not very efficient. And I know their rookie, Bucky Irving.
Yeah, he's actually – he won't take the job, but man, he's getting a run. And by the way, they did a phenomenal job today against Kamara. They have a couple runs in the second half, the 16-yarder.
Oh yeah,
I'm stunned. You can't, again. He's great on that turf. He's great. He accelerated. He had under 90 yards on 26 carries, 3.3. Yeah, done a game better than that. I mean, they just the D-tackles deserve a gold star. Everybody, that group, all media, we did. Everybody beat him up, pretty badly. The coaching staff. And they rose to the occasion. That's really the point here. Everybody rose to the occasion. This is an unbelievably phenomenal win for this football team.
Yeah, and by the way, the Kamara catch was a great catch by him. The coverage was good.
Yeah, the coverage was not bad.
On the wheel, right? That was good coverage. He just turned around and made a really nice grab. All right, we'll have this game broken down, covered even more going forward. We'll have great shows this week. We'll have Inside the Tape. We'll have Gun on One. Our Patreon members will get to ask Greg Cosell questions Tuesday night. ITB. Andrew DiCecco, you had your first Inside the Locker podcast this week. It was really good. I hope everybody had a chance to listen to that. Now I want to end it on this because you mentioned talking to Isaiah Rodgers for the last few weeks. He did not come in. Ringo came in.
Yeah, he didn't play that.
Right. You've talked to him. It sounds to me like he's only going to be used on a real I guess the hand, because it's wrapped, is still not 100%.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's just going to be emergency until that's 100% right. Why make it worse? And we'll have to see how he's used when he is healthy, because obviously Ringo was drafted to be a piece for the future. So I don't think he's going to be playing over Ringo even in those type of circumstances anyway.
Right. All right. We will see. We'll have a lot of great stuff this week on the Inside the Birds platform. I want to thank everybody who's watching now and listening on the platforms once again, because we had a banner week last week as far as views, as far as listens, engagement. And it was really fun, even though the Eagles were coming off a really tough loss Monday night. So hopefully everybody will be back in great spirits again, and we'll get to do it all this week in anticipation of the Week 4 Eagles game against Tampa. So for Andrew DiCecco, Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. You've been watching Inside the Birds Postgame Live.